Europe's goal for a common air and missile defense system. Easier said than done. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who is seeking support for a second term as president, has endorsed a Greek and Polish proposal for a European air and missile defense system that would operate outside of NATO and provide a, quote, comprehensive air defense system to protect our common EU airspace against all incoming threats, end quote. This is not a new idea, as Germany has been pursuing a similar idea with the support of 21 European countries, and there is also a French and Italian initiative for a European air and missile defense system that is a rival to the German plan. Joseph Borrell, the top European diplomat, endorsed the Greek and Polish proposals. However, he acknowledged that, quote, the devil is in the details, end quote, of the European defense proposal, which is crucial, raising questions that go beyond missile defense. The German government under Chancellor Olaf Scholz has proposed a European air and missile defense system in 2022 after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The European Sky Shield Initiative, ESSI, a German program, aims to establish a layered defense system by utilizing the German IRIS-T, American Patriot, and the American Israeli Arrow 3 defense systems. The program is aimed to not only bridge the gap in the air and missile defense in Europe, but also stimulate defense spending in the region, spearheaded by a country that has long neglected and underfunded its defenses. We anticipate that the program will encourage the adoption of a common procurement and air defense operation. The German initiative has received support from 21 European countries. The German initiative has received criticism from France, which is working with Italy to create a European air defense similar to the U.S. Patriot system called SAMP-T. When identifying an air defense system for ESSI, the Germans considered the SAMP-T, but they chose the German, Israeli, and American systems. This decision led to increased tensions between French President Macron and his ongoing dispute within Europe and its allies over the preference for American defense systems over European, primarily French-built weapons. The SAMP-T is an advanced weapon system that is newer than the ESSI systems, so it has some capability improvements. The problem is that the SAMP-T is not operational, whereas the ESSI components are all operational and have proven capability. NATO forces throughout Europe also use the Patriot, indicating that interoperability between NATO and ESSI is not a problem. The French's main criticism is that the ESSI relies on defense industries outside of Europe, and this is an issue that President Macron is championing as he tries to reduce the United States' influence on European defense. According to President Macron, the Ukraine war and Russia's apparent shift to a wartime economy have shown the necessity of rebuilding Europe's long-neglected defense industry. He believes that European NATO defense spending should prioritize Europe, as buying weapons from outside Europe prevents Europeans from becoming self-sufficient in their defense needs. Just as Chancellor Scholz argues that a European originating system like ESSI will promote additional defense spending, President Macron substantially argues the same thing, but that the euros earmarked for defense stay in Europe and programs like ESSI, by not being European-based, degrade European sovereignty and continued dependence on the United States. German Chancellor Scholz has said little about the French and Italian push to create their own similar ESSI, except that he supports it if it does not conflict with the German initiative. Outside of the French obsession with eroding U.S. influence in Europe, party politics play a role. President von der Leyen, Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis, and Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk share a similar center-right political alignment, with Chancellor Scholz's SPD party serving as a rival to President von der Leyen's CDU. Also, Prime Ministers Mitsotakis and Tusk to a greater extent, meaning Prime Minister Tusk to a greater extent, have been relatively cool towards Berlin and its leadership during the war, and though not signing on to the French initiative, have not committed to the German initiative either. In her second term, President von der Leyen, who agreed to commission an air defense white paper and provide findings within the first 100 days of its commission, The President's goal is to have the European Commission play a greater role in Europe's defense. The European Union is not part of NATO, so any European air defense system would be outside of NATO and its command structure. It would also mean that the EU would be making decisions on defense and defense procurement, which have typically been under the authority of the member states of the EU. If the EU decides how to proceed, it would increase the EU's centralized power at the expense of member countries. The assumption is that the European Union would need to fund this initiative, but there is a risk that defense spending could hinder EU states' ability to fulfill their NATO 2% GDP obligation. We assume that the EU will also contribute to the development of a missile defense system, thereby shifting limited funds from NATO to non-NATO European Union. Since the EU lacks a military structure, the operation of such defense system from command and control to individual armed force members or non-military government workers remains unclear. The other issue is, will the EU maintain NATO interoperability, or will it eventually choose its own standards? Most likely it would strive to uphold NATO standards, albeit with no guarantee. The other issue is that while the German-led ESSI proposal aims to protect European airspace, it is not a project of the European Union. Despite not being an EU proposal, President Macron's desire to shape EU under French leadership suggests that the French-Italian proposal ultimately aims to function as an EU instrument. The Greek-Polish proposal presented to President von der Leyen is an EU proposal that necessitates unanimous support from all member countries to establish this system. Given that this is a new arena for the EU, it is likely that numerous unanimous votes will be required to create the new regulations necessary for the funding, creation, and operation of the system. It is unlikely that this will happen. The questions presented by the various air defense initiatives, as well as the Ukraine war itself, have identified a gap in European defenses. It has exposed the Europeans, and to a lesser extent the United States, to harsh reality in the area of defense industry neglect. The United States has maintained a robust defense industry, but not one strong enough and large enough to be the arsenal of democracy for advanced weapon systems. The Europeans, particularly Germany, have allowed their defense industrial base and supply chains to deteriorate to such an extent that in the third year of the Ukraine war, they were still unable to produce enough weapons to supply Ukraine, let alone replenish their own stocks. The other question revolves around the EU's intentions and whether it will use this as an opportunity as a catalyst to establish a European army under its banner. Considering the German position on ESSI, its rivalry with France, and the unresolved questions about EU's ability to field an armed force in something as complex as air and missile defense, it is likely that all these initiatives will fall short of expectations and a united Europe will remain fragmented.